Okay, everybody, today we're going to talk about Survivor.
No, Laura, we're going to talk about election and voting rights.
Oh, so we don't get to vote somebody off the island?
Well, we could vote someone off the show. I mean, even if it's just for fun, or for real.
All right, well, there are no bad ideas in brainstorming, I guess. Go ahead, Andy. Let's see what you got.
I mean, I think we all know who's going to get invited to no longer be with us on the show.
It's me, isn't it? You want to vote me off the show, don't you?
No, of course not, Allie.
No.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out by the end of the
I
episode.
hate you all.
On today's episode, we're doing the first of probably a couple episodes on election 2020. We're talking about election litigation today. Hopefully everybody's blood pressure can stay under control, and off we go. Welcome to Find Laws, Don't Judge Me, the podcast about the law in real life. I'm Laura Temmie, and I'm joined by Allie Marshall.
Good morning.
Andy Leonati.
Hello.
And Joe Fawbush.
Hey, everybody. I'm super excited for this topic.
Laura, I am ready to get mad today.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to keep track of our heart rates on this one. This year's election is complicated, to say the least, with the pandemic and everything else going on. So we're going to be talking about some of the cases that are in the works and a very old case that I'm sure a lot of people remember. Yeah, I know. It's the big one, Bush v. Gore.
Yeah, I think we should start with that one just while we're still calm and relaxed here. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about whether we're going to have a repeat of Bush v. Gore. It does seem like all the signs are pointing to this election potentially being decided by the Supreme Court. There certainly seems to be legal challenges that both sides are getting prepared for.
I'm going to put on my polling nerd hat for a second here and say that right now it doesn't point that way. I could be hilariously wrong. But I think you would have to see where the margins would have to be so much narrower than any sort of polling data is showing right now for that to happen. Although, yeah, I agree that it's still absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, Andy, I think that's a good point because there are, battleground states where Joe Biden has a significant lead. Sometimes it's, 9 points or greater. Which would indicate that it might not be as close as Bush v. Gore was in Florida. There still is a concern that it's going to be challenged even if the vote totals aren't that close. President Trump has said that he legitimately won the popular vote in 2016, despite evidence to the contrary. It does seem like he is going to challenge the results of the election almost regardless of the vote totals. I think he just tweeted yesterday that there's no way that we can trust the vote totals in this election.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to have a repeat of Bush v. Gore, just partially because even from a technology standpoint, the way, and using absentee ballots, the way that we're voting is completely different than in 2000. We're not going to have this hanging Chad issue. I think it will be interesting to see if there is a challenge to the election. It'll be interesting to see if Bush v. Gore comes up as a relevant precedent, because there's language in the decision itself where they sort of say, we don't really want this to be used for anything else. But it has come up in some circuit court cases. So I'm interested to see if this case is used to swing a new challenge one way or the other.
All right. Well, you guys have succeeded in making me a little more nervous. That didn't take long.
It might come up. I don't know if it's going to be the same thing all over again, but I think that this case will come up. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there is some question, too, about whether the Supreme Court would even want to get involved in this election. With Bush v. Gore, the way that the Supreme Court took up that case has been under question. So has the legal reasoning used in that case for good reason. And then, the fact that they said, this is a unique case. Nobody ever mentioned this case again, basically, in the opinion.
Yeah, I think I saw a blog post by a constitutional law professor where they said it was like Cinderella's dress. It turns into rags at midnight. This opinion, like, we're never talking about this again.
Should we briefly, for our younger listeners who don't know what Bush v. Gore is, or kind of just know it vaguely, should we kind of refresh everybody's memory?
So, yeah, for anybody who needs a refresher, whether it's just been a long time since you thought about this case or you're like me and you were a little bit on the young side when it happened. So the 2000 election, it all came down to Florida. There was 25 electoral votes up for grabs. And at the time, Bush led Gore by about 2,000 votes in Florida. And that triggered a machine recount under state law. And then Gore's team also requested hand recounts in several counties that tended to vote Democrat. They kind of left the more conservative counties alone and didn't bother to ask for recounts there. If memory serves, the hand recounts, they couldn't get them done before the deadline in the state statute. So the Florida Secretary of State went ahead and declared Bush the winner, but the state Supreme Court said, okay, hold on a second, and ordered a statewide manual recount. And that's how it sort of came to be in front of the Supreme Court. Bush's team asked for an emergency stay, and now all of a sudden the Supreme Court had to decide if the Florida Supreme Court had exceeded their authority by ordering this recount.
They, on a 5-4 decision along ideological lines, they just said, let's cut it off here, because without the counties in Florida having a standard way of manually counting the ballots, they said it violated equal protection rights. There were definitely other ways of deciding this case. I'm being kind of kind there. And, but my biggest question is judicial nominations and judicial appointments have become so politicized today that if we get another 5-4 decision, I mean, if those exact circumstances repeated itself, I don't think people would accept it. In 2000, people just kind of said, okay, well, the Supreme Court has made its decision. Al Gore conceded the next day, and people just kind of went on with their lives.
But it didn't, and again, I'm sort of basing this on things that I've read since, but didn't the reputation of the court, as far as being impartial, didn't it kind of take a hit after this decision?
Yeah, it did, for sure. But it also was broadly accepted, too. There was definitely sections of the U.S. who were extremely angry and did not like the decision. But, I mean, in terms of the overall populace, there wasn't mass protests. People didn't question whether they should not follow the Supreme Court decision. And it's getting to the point where I wonder if that would be the same thing. I mean, of course, people are going to get upset about a decision like that, especially one that's so controversial and could have been decided other ways. But my question is, I think we would see mass protests. I think we would see people in the streets. I think we would see a significant portion of the population not accept the election results and consider the other party an illegitimate president.
Well, Gore, I will say also that Gore conceded in a televised national address later in December. He kind of told people to kind of lower the temperature a bit.
But he didn't have to do that. I mean, there's no law that says that he has to do that. And, I mean, I think that's another change between now and then is that, I mean, certainly President Trump wouldn't concede. I don't know that Joe Biden would concede. So absent a concession from one of the candidates, you could see this fight drag on quite some time.
Yeah.
So did I raise everybody's blood pressure?
A little bit. I'm just, I'm taking a deep breath.
I'm gonna have a drink with my lunch. Just kidding, boss.
We should have done this at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, all of it gives me anxiety, and I suppose people may read into it how I sort of view things generally, but I have so much angst about the whole creating question marks about our election process beforehand, as if to set it up for that, and to like stir the pot really, for people to not trust it when it may be just fine, and that is just so scary, because that's how problems begin.
Well, and yeah, to Joe's point, if someone can't accept the Supreme Court's decision, we don't really have another mechanism beyond that. So it just kind of becomes, if people say, well, screw what the Supreme Court says, then what do we do?
My favorite word, military junta, is what we.
Oh God.
Oh no.
Oh, that's fine, Andy. I didn't want to sleep ever.
Well, maybe we should get into before we all have a panic attack on our show here. Maybe we should get into some of Allie's points about the ways that people are calling the results of this election into question. Ever since Bush v. Gore, election litigation has just spiked every election year since. And, I don't know the exact count. I'm not sure how many, if anyone does have the exact count, but there are hundreds of lawsuits over this election alone, just that were filed this year.
Well, yeah, and that's not even counting election day emergency court filings to keep polling places open or to close them or anything like that, for just sort of at the more local level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, because we saw a lot of issues in the primaries even. There were, because of, pandemic restrictions and things, there were such long lines that by the time people got to the door, the polling place was closed. You got, I think we all saw the videos of people banging on the doors and that kind of thing. That's
happened ever since a winning electoral strategy is to just depress the overall amount of votes. And that has led to closed polling places and consolidated polling places, that has led to long lines.
Let's get into one of those, because I think Texas passed a rule allowing everyone over the age of 65 to cast a mail-in ballot without any excuse. Otherwise, in Texas, you have to have a reason for voting by mail. You have
not good.
That. Yeah, so they're not one of those states that just allows everybody to vote by mail. Some states do, of course. So the Democratic Party of Texas sued this rule change, saying that under the 26th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, you can't discriminate or restrict voting by age. If you're over 18, all the rules should be the same and you can't restrict certain people for voting. So they said that this rule is unconstitutional, and the rule should really be anybody can vote regardless of their age, so long as they're over 18. They should be able to do it by mail. The Fifth Circuit, though, disagreed. They said that Texas can, in fact, have this rule, that it doesn't violate the Constitution. They're saying it's not too much of a restriction on people voting. It's just, they're balancing the need for states to prevent fraud and the legitimate state's interest to protect fraud, and also this, interest in letting people vote safely. So the Fifth Circuit, they did say that the Democratic Party may have some recourse in lower court by pursuing an equal protection claim, but that wasn't an issue in the appeals court decision itself. So it got sent back down to lower court. It's still ongoing. We'll see what happens. Texans only have until October 23rd to request a mail-in ballot. So hopefully the district court can get out a decision fairly soon. But as it stands right now, people under 65 in Texas cannot request a mail-in ballot for no reason. They would have to go into the polling places. And so then, yeah, of course, the question is, is this going to lower the vote count because people are too scared to go to polling places?
Yeah.
Do you know what the covered reasons are that someone could request a mail-in ballot?
Yeah, I think one of them is disability. Another one is being out of the country. I think there's like 4 of them, and yeah, they aren't very inclusive. You have to have one of 4 stated reasons. And yeah, like I said, I think basically if you can't physically make it to a polling place. Mm-hmm. And there was actually a Texas Supreme Court decision that said that lack of immunity from COVID-19 does not qualify as a disability. People tried to claim that, like, hey, look, I could get a serious disease if I go. That counts as a disability. And the Texas Supreme Court said, no, it doesn't.
Cool.
Very surprising.
Yeah, I'm just that whole time I was trying to keep myself from making, like dad doing yard work noises, like just like, I just the whole voter fraud thing really makes my blood boil because it just, there's been so few cases of actual voter fraud, intentional voter fraud using mail-in ballots. And then you have places like where I'm from, I'm from a very small town in rural Minnesota, and in our county, they switched to all mail-in voting years ago because there weren't enough people to need an actual polling place. And so they shut down the actual polling place in the township and they sent everybody absentee ballots, and it's been that way for several years now. And there's no issue.
Well, to quote one of my favorite all-time movies, Clue, but just the voter fraud is just a red herring, right? Like it's not a thing that's causing enough harm. Mm-hmm. There's more good coming out of mail-in voting than there is bad.
Yeah, the days of like the Democratic machine in Chicago magically finding more ballots like in 1960. Mm-hmm. I mean, if that's still a problem, then figure out how to stop that being a problem, not actually, disenfranchising individuals.
Right.
So I guess we can move on to the next case that will also, I really appreciate you giving me this one, Joe, since this is the one that makes me the angriest.
Was that your intention with this episode, Joe?
Joe, you have a gift.
The listeners want an angry Andy, so we give the listeners what they want.
Yeah. Racer versus DeSantis out of Florida and the 11th Circuit. So for just a little bit of background, in 2018, Florida voters approved a constitutional amendment re-enfranchising convicted felons once they complete, quote, all terms of, end quote, their sentence. Mm-hmm. Panicking because, for whatever reason, the Florida legislature then passed a law defining, quote, all terms of, end quote, a sentence to include court costs, fees, and fines, which can be quite onerous in Florida because the state does not have an income tax. And so the judicial branch is essentially funded through these court costs that are levied. Mm-hmm. So then, because of the legislature's action after the constitutional amendment passed, voters then challenged the legislators' actions as a violation of the 24th Amendment's ban on poll taxes.
Sure. After a
federal district court sided with voters, the 11th Circuit magically agreed to an en banc hearing, siding with the legislature earlier this month in a 6-4 ruling. So the ACLU estimates that this will prevent approximately 774,000 people from regaining the franchise for this election.
Wow.
appellate judge, chief judge of the 11th Circuit, William Pryor, who has generated a bit of Supreme Court buzz for a second Trump term, said in his ruling that those fees are not a poll tax, but a criminal penalty. Also worth noting, though, is that the state of Florida continually refuses to set up a system easily notifying convicted felons how much they may owe so that they can settle their debts and regain the franchise. And, Judge Pryor apparently thinks everyone can afford $10 bananas because he waved away reams of evidence presented in the district court trial showing just how hard it is to get a hold of that information and how financially onerous that is to people who have just gotten out of prison. And how hard that may be for them to afford thousands upon thousands of dollars in court costs, fees, and fines. We're not even just talking about a criminal fine for your conviction. We're talking about court costs here as well. And Judge Pryor also noted that the state has no responsibility to make that information readily available.
Cool.
So people are left to kind of a hodgepodge of countywide deals. To you have to maybe go down to your courthouse and pull the proper paperwork and blah 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 blah. There is a small silver lining for this election right now, in that you can register to vote if because of the way the constitutional amendment has worked, you can register to vote. And because at the time, the Florida Board of Elections, does not have the information available to them either about how much someone may owe and whether you've actually fully satisfied the, quote, terms of your sentence. And you might only then lose the franchise, say, next June, once the wheels of the bureaucratic machine determine that you actually owe some money still.
So the left hand doesn't seem to know what the right hand's doing.
This garbage just infuriates me for a number of reasons, but I mean, I realize that granting voting rights to everyone over the age of 18, including those who are currently in prison, is not a winning political issue. But if you are a U.S. citizen over the age of 18, you should be able to register to vote and vote.
Well, thank you, Andy. I hope that wasn't too stressful for you.
Let people vote.
I agree with you. Just let people vote. And if you can't win based on who's voting, then too bad.
Allie, I know that it's probably time for me to stop talking, and you have an interesting case that you want to talk about as well.
Well, want to talk about, maybe that's overselling it a little bit. I did some reading up on Donald J. Trump for President versus Murphy, which is a case out of New Jersey. In this, Donald J. Trump for President's committee, the Republican National Committee, and the New Jersey Republicans filed a lawsuit against the New Jersey governor and Secretary of State for an executive order that they issued regarding mail-in ballots. Basically, the order directs the state to send mail-in ballots to registered voters and requires election officials to count ballots within a certain period of time after the polls close, but that timing sort of differs depending on whether it's postmarked or not. The Trump campaign contends that this violates the Constitution by, and this is one of my favorite words, usurpation of the state's legislature, which has the power to set the process of choosing electors for the presidency. But the argument is basically their argument is that it's a recipe for disaster because fraudulent votes dilute honest votes. Again, this red herring. Experts familiar with the case, however, are really just, it's not like a real case. It just appears to be one intended for messaging. A little meat to it. They aren't really following up on the things they should have been doing procedurally in the case. And the strategy isn't really to win, but just to get that message out there again to put in question the election. And it positions them to challenge it in November, should they be displeased with the result. That's all I have to say about that. I don't really want to comment.
I reserve the right to challenge this election should I lose under any circumstance.
Yeah.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Allie, with the reason why they're filing this, because this isn't the only lawsuit like this. You know, other organizations have filed alleging voter fraud, but no one has yet come to the table and shown anything real. But, you know, there are also a lot of lawsuits about kind of peripheral issues that aren't necessarily about election fraud or that kind of thing. And I know, Laura, you've written on a case about ballot access signatures.
Yeah, I wrote about a case in the Sixth Circuit, and the decision came out. I guess the original injunction was back in July. So essentially, what happened is that Michigan election law requires for any proposed ballot questions to obtain, it's a very specific number, 347,047 signatures.
Good. Love it.
I don't know why they couldn't just round up to like 348,000, 350,000.
Is it the exact number? No more, no less?
Well, it has to be at least that many.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, when I was first reading the opinion, I read this number 3 or 4 times. I was like, why? I don't know. Anyway, so in order to get on the ballot, you have to get this many signatures on your proposed question. Problem is, and the deadline to do so was sometime in May, I think. And the problem is, in a pandemic, that's pretty hard to do. You know,
good.
Things
should be
exactly like things are shut down. People can't go door to door, and so this organization, Sawari Media, which is a group of civil rights activists, they filed for an injunction to suspend this signature requirement for the 2020 ballot, and that was granted, and then was actually upheld by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Sixth Circuit found that under the circumstances, the signature requirement severely burdened their First Amendment rights and therefore shouldn't be enforced. Now, Governor Whitmer's office, of course, appealed this. They filed for an emergency stay with the Supreme Court and then withdrew it about a week later for reasons that I haven't exactly been able to find, but I have a feeling it's because they knew they weren't going to win. And so, yeah. A little bit of a silver lining on this one. Andy, I know you don't like ballot questions that much, but at least these people are able to get access to the ballot and put their question on there.
No.
I know you don't like it, but it's, in my opinion, better than the alternative.
The better alternative is for everybody to pay attention to who they're voting for.
I agree with you on that.
So I have about 8 other cases I want to get to, but I think we're gonna
save them for another day.
I think we're gonna have to save them, before everybody else starts.
Our listeners are throwing in the white flag.
Yeah.
So am I, to be honest.
But I do want to mention that I did write a summary of some of these cases. They're going to be on the Fine Law Voting Rights section, which explains voting rights. So if you want to read more about these cases, including links to the actual opinions themselves, please do.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, for mentioning the Fine Law Voting Rights section. That's a great resource for people. And definitely take a look.
Yes.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Allie's going to teach us some Latin.
Artificial intelligence continues to reshape America's legal system. One sophisticated AI tool is Quick Check Judicial, which analyzes multiple filings from a single matter, showing judges what cases you and your opponent did or did not cite. This gives judges greater insight into both sides' arguments. But what if you could gain that same insight using the same tool your judge has? Well, now you can. Quick Check Judicial is coming later this summer. Be the first to see it. Visit tr.com/quick-check.
And we're back. So, Allie, you wanted to talk about some dead language today, right? Well, not dead to us, but even though nobody speaks Latin anymore, lawyers certainly do fairly often, with varying degrees of success, in my opinion. So what have you got for us?
And now it's time for legal Latin lingo. Welcome to the game show no one asked for. The game that has you yelling Veni Vidi Vici to strangers on the street. Legal Latin lingo tests your knowledge of Latin terms used in legal settings. Who's ready to get started? No one? It appears I am a persona non grata. Well, let's do this anyway.
Oh, heyo.
Our three contestants are my fellow hosts on this show. We do not award prizes on this show. All our guests appear pro bono. Let's welcome Joe, Laura, and Andy for this quid pro quo.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever.
Let's get this over with.
All right. Okay, I'll lob the first legal Latin lingo term your way then. A fortiori. Is it A, a really nice car your uncle bought with money he doesn't have? B, a lame argument that someone makes in court and the judge isn't buying? Or C, an argument from a stronger reason, meaning that because one fact is true, a second related and included fact must also be true.
Are we supposed to tell you the answer or do we write it down?
You can tell me. You can guess.
It would be C.
I'm going to go with C because it seemed the most complicated.
What? Are you saying I'm not very good at writing these?
What was the term again?
A fortiori.
I think I'm gonna go with B. It sounds like maybe an argument that someone is shoehorning in and the judge isn't buying it.
The answer is actually C.
Oh.
Yeah. An argument from a stronger reason.
Yeah, good for me and Joe. All right, whatever.
Yep. All right, the next one is de novo. Is it A, a lesser known band from the 80s known for the Dutch pop rhythm? B, a cool legal backpack for holding all your law books? Or C, a new, starting from the beginning?
C. I know this one.
I wish it was B, though. That sounds awesome. That's a good idea.
They don't hand out backpacks when you join the bar, unfortunately.
Yeah, we should do Fine Law branded de novo backpacks.
No.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Oh, God,
there we
that's
go.
the nerdiest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, people will buy it.
We could have a promo code for that.
Ooh, yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to go with C as well.
You would be correct.
Yes.
Anew, starting from the beginning, such as in a trial de novo. Okay, hold on. I have to be careful with this one. It's a little harder to say. Forum non conveniens. Is it A, an inappropriate place to argue? B, a disagreeable forum for the matter to be heard? C, a surprisingly obvious Latin legal term? Or D, all of the above?
Wait, forum non-convenient?
Forum non conveniens.
But yeah, I mean, essentially you were right, Andy.
Okay, that
yeah.
sounded like English to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
I'm
one
gonna
is
go-
a little more obvious.
I'm going to go
Yeah.
with D.
Yeah, I think I'd agree.
I'm going to go specifically with only B.
A disagreeable forum for the matter to be heard. Yeah. Yeah, it's all of them. All right, and our final one.
I would say this qualifies.
All right. Final one is mandamus. Is it A, a thieving character in Harry Potter? B, a command usually issued by a higher court to a lower court? Or C, a really fun word to say in casual conversation?
I love the call out to
I-
Mundungus Fletcher. Is that his character name? Is that Mundungus Fletcher?
Yay, Joe. I mean, I wish I could answer both B and C because it is fun to say, but I'm pretty sure
B?
it's B. I think
Yes,
it's-
it is.
Yeah.
A writ,
Honestly,
writ of
I
mandamus.
wasn't. Yeah, I don't remember what the answers
It's
were.
yeah,
so-
when a higher court tells the lower court what to do. It doesn't happen very often.
Is it pronounced
No.
mandamus like Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Jean-Claude Mandamus.
Jean-Claude Van Damme?
It should be.
Oh, I wish. I think it's mandamus, but I don't know.
Mandamus? It could be.
I think it is mandamus. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a bummer.
Well, you know what, though? No one around speaks Latin. We can get by with
Right.
whatever we want to do.
Yeah, we can say whatever we want.
For all those dinner parties that I'm going to have with John Roberts.
there are little clues about how to pronounce some of these online, but I couldn't quite figure them out. But I do actually think it is interesting to think about some of these terms that are constantly used. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, what does that exactly mean? Oh, yeah. But thank you for joining us on Legal Latin Lingo, the game show, again, no one asked for, no one wanted, and no one enjoyed. We hope you'll join us next time. Veni Vidi Vici.
Oh, my God. Thank you, Allie. That was fun. It reminded me of all those times during law school where I would pretend that I knew what the Latin term meant because I either didn't have time to look it up or I just would, I'd miss it in the reading. And so somebody would say it and I'm sitting there going, what the hell are you talking about?
That was actually almost how I introduced it, is like, the time when you nod your head knowingly as if you understand what the hell people are saying, but you don't.
Actually, I remember my evidence professor telling a story about how even I think he said his first year in practice, he thought that the phrase motion in limine was motion in lemonade. And that was years ago that I was in that class, but he told us that story. And it really stuck with me that, sometimes things can fly under the radar and you don't realize that you're wrong until much, much later.
That sounds refreshing. Motion and lemonade?
Yeah, it sounds much better.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
All right. Well, thank you, Allie, for that little change of pace. And thank you all for listening to this episode of Fine Laws Don't Judge Me. Check the show notes for related content, and we'll see you next time.
All right, that's all, people.
You're turning into Porky Pig.
That's all, folks.
That's all, folks.
That has to go in the outtake, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.